So again, welcome everybody to the correspondence course. If anybody here is new or here for the first time, the process that we're following here is we're sharing together, reading together the Unity Correspondence Course that Charles Filmore directed and developed in about 100 years ago, maybe even 110 years ago, sometime around the 19 teens. And there's a lot of interesting metaphysical stuff that he and his team put together. And this was designed for newcomers. And since most of us here are not newcomers, we could consider it like a refresher course. And so last week we've been in the first lesson. I'm going to put that up on the screen, the share screen. Um, and the first lesson is called The Silence. And so what we do here is we just we read together, and
Oh,
those who are willing to, we just ask for a volunteer to read, and we read a paragraph or two, and then we reflect on it and see if there's anything that any of us has to share, and then we move on, and we do that till our hour is up. So, are there any questions about the process that we're sharing together here? Okay, I think we did. I can't remember. I should take notes, or maybe somebody could volunteer to be secretary. But I think we had. Did we read the hallowing the name of God paragraph week?
yes, yes.
Okay, so we're in God's will, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I love that. Fresno comes through.
Yes. Do you have a picture?
So
No.
no, you're not showing up in
The
camera yet.
picture. Okay,
I'll take care of that in a minute.
It's okay, but we can hear you.
Okay.
All right,
Continue.
so would somebody be willing to read paragraph 16? What is God's will for man?
I would.
Great, thank you.
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, as in heaven, so on earth. We have learned that the kingdom of God is always, everywhere, evenly present. This is a prayer that it may come into expression and be manifest in the earth, the outer, as it is in heaven, the inner. Thus it is that God's will is done. The great moving force that tends toward perfect expression in the universe, in everyone, in nature, and in everything is the will of God. God's will is God's plan, purpose, intent, and pleasure for us and all creation. It is very necessary in praying, thy will be done, to remember that his will for us is always good. He is love. He wills not that his children shall suffer in any way, but that they shall come to the knowledge of him and be blessed with his wholeness.
Thanks, Stella.
And we decided we're not reading the footnote, right?
Um, what we
No.
did last week is we read them after we read the reading.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Shall I continue?
yeah, because this one's chock full of some good
Mm-hmm.
men.
Thus it is that God's will is done. To do the will of God means to cooperate consciously with the law of mind action in thinking, feeling, word, action, and reaction. And pleasure. God's will can also be called the I am identity in us, for it is the perfect law of mind action that produces only good. He is love. God's will is always good and based on love. Come to the knowledge of him. God's will is also his purpose, design, and intent of absolute good for man and all creation. In man, God's will can also be called the I am identity in him, for it is the perfect law of mind action that produces only good.
Wow.
It is chock full.
Yeah, thank you. Any thoughts, reactions, questions, disagreements?
Hard to attain.
Well, I
Hard
think
to
it's
live up
interesting.
to. Go ahead.
I think it's interesting the point about the I am. And then it says that I think Della read, my eyes were closed, but Della read that it is always good. And yet we know the power of the I am. I thought that was an interesting connection. The power of the I am can appear to be bad. I mean, I know maybe there's no good or bad, but if you say I'm sick or I'm angry or whatever, that is the power of the I am. And we've often talked about how, and this puts it into context here, how the universe doesn't discern between negative and positive. It just provides what it is that you claim through the I am. So I thought that was a really an interesting insight that is in here.
Thanks, Claudia. And I think also just parenthetically, it shows us why these footnotes can be valuable because the I am is in the footnote.
Yeah, it's like his will for us is always good. Mm. His will for us may be always to deliver that which we claim. Um, so
Yeah.
that
Well, I also think it's useful in the context of the kingdom. So we started out here, what is God's will for man? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done as in heaven, so on earth. So he talked about how we discussed this last week, the idea of God everywhere evenly present. We talked about that word evenly. And so the I am is that expression of the everywhere evenly present in whatever we label. This goes to what I heard you say, Claudia, whatever we label as good or bad, God is equally present.
right. Well, yes, whatever we experience as good or bad,
Right.
God is fully present. But my other point was, and I'll turn on my video. My other point is maybe this is what you're saying. There's no discernment between good or bad because it's just there.
Right.
It just is.
Yeah, and that's what we humans struggle with. It's like how can bad things happen to good people? In Rabbi Kushner's famous phrase. Anybody else have any thoughts about thy will be done?
Yeah, I'm still stuck with that last sentence in the note of number 4.
Okay.
Yeah, God's will can also, I think that's what Claudia was saying. God's will can also be called the I am identity in Him, for it is the perfect law of mind action that produces only good. Huh.
What do you read in that, Lillian?
Well, I'm meaning that they're saying that anything in my mind produces only good.
Okay.
Uh, I'm, yeah,
Well, it's would you be willing to consider it starts out whatever God produces in God mind is only good, and that our minds are a reflection of divine mind. So it always starts with God, the I am, the kingdom,
mm,
and that the amness, the being, the pure being, is something that we fully 100% participate in because there's only God.
Okay.
So it's interesting when you don't feel like everything is right with the world that you have to look at the mirror. You have and think, what am I projecting? What am I thinking?
Yeah. One of the ways I do it, Della, is I just say, okay, how is God present in this? And I just go into the question. Oftentimes the power is in the question, at least for us humans. How is God present in this thing that I'm labeling awful or that I'm feeling? If I'm sick or I've fallen down and hurt myself, it's like, how is God present here? Because it sure feels bad.
Does that help?
Yeah. Yeah, because it's my intention to experience God 24/7. And what this is telling me, let's just say it's my understanding is that whatever's happening is still God expressing as this what is happening. There is no place God is not. And so when my mind goes, oh, that's BS, then that's my work. Because my mind argues with God. Just in fact, do you remember Dorothy Pearson talking about arguing with God?
No, keep going.
Yeah, she used to talk about this is my memory. Claudia, maybe you can help me or anybody else who knew Dorothy, but she'd every once in a while say, I find myself arguing with God and then I have to make myself stop. Because it's human. It's human for us. This is the work here. It's to cease identifying as human and choose to identify as divine. And then, as it says here, the great moving force that tends toward perfect expression in the universe in everyone, in me, in nature, and in everything is the will of God. So remember, how does she put it? She goes, something about, I have to let the Dorothy of me go.
She always talked about big D Dorothy and little D Dorothy.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the big D Dorothy was the ego Dorothy, and the little D Dorothy was that part of her that um, channeled, for lack of a better word here, channeled that God spark of her. So that big D Dorothy was the ego that maybe she was arguing with God, and then little D Dorothy was the one that just flowed.
Yeah, so that's our challenge. As I've come to understand it in my own life. Which I am I living in? Am I living in the limited I am of Marty? Or am I living in the infinite I am of God?
What comes to mind here is the Buddhist thought about the first dart and the second dart. There'll always be pain. There's always going to be pain, but there doesn't necessarily have to be suffering.
Exactly.
The suffering part is on you. So the first dart, like, shit happens or, people die. But how you relate to that, how you hold on to that, how you internalize that, do you argue with God about it, or do you just, as you were saying, Marty, look for the God in the situation and move on? Is interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I guess it's going back to that I am. What do you sit in the consciousness of? Is it, even here is a label, is it good or is it bad? That's a label, you know?
Right. Which means it's a thought, which means it's a thing,
It's an experience.
and it's an experience.
Well, I think kind of like Lillian mentioned number 4 for the footnotes. I was rereading number 1 a couple times
Okay.
because it stuck out about cooperating consciously.
Right.
So that stuck out, but it also the word reaction in thinking, feeling, word, action, and reaction. Because I know that I watch the news or you get the input of whatever's going on, and sometimes we are falling back onto our reactions, and it's hard to just be in the moment and review this, to slow down, realize the purpose or the intent, and taking God's will into consideration first, without just automatically reacting. And so that first one of saying cooperate consciously, boy, that takes effort right from the start.
I'd say,
Yeah, that's a great point. And then when you cooperate consciously, it goes back to, well, what is God? God is, I don't know, there's 5 things that Filmore talks about, or the 12 powers. You know, God is love. God is truth. God is will. God is strength. You know, so that is the the thing, the mind action we're supposed to be consciously cooperating with.
Susan, I think you had something to add.
I don't know how important this is, but the only way I can conceptualize these concepts is to think about a real situation. And for some reason right now, the fires in Southern California keep coming to mind. And if we align ourselves with God, I keep thinking, well, that will bring peace wherever I go. I can't stop the fires, but at least if I align myself with the reality of the God presence, then it changes a little bit of the energy right here. And if people keep changing that energy, what if the people in Southern California change their energy a little and they become more efficient at escaping a dangerous situation? You understand my line of thought. I think it's always, as you all know, it's always good to align yourself with the God concept, but and know that it's better everywhere, even though things may not be as good as we'd like to see them, or in our mind, you know, we're assigning the good or the bad, as we've already discussed. But if we think about the good in every situation, it's better at every level, even though we may not be able to see that, and that is what faith. I don't know if that is of any help or not, but that was what was in my mind, and I want to share with you.
Yeah, thanks. I just offer for all of us, there's no bad ideas here. There's no great or small. This is all divine conversation. So thank you. Each one of us is an expression of God, and partly why I look forward to this time together is to hear what you all have to say and learn from each other. And
It's also interesting to think about Dorothy's big D and little d, because it's hard to find our own little d or little whatever amidst a lot of noise. So that's part of what the meditation and prayer is about, is to just kind of put some noise aside for a moment and be
right.
more quiet to find your small letter.
Yeah, the still small voice. And of course, remember, we're the lesson that we're looking at here, as you're reminding me, Della, is called the silence. And so the focus of all this, so we're in the middle of it, so we may forget the earlier readings that we did about the silent and the secret place of the Most High and the inner chamber and so forth. But yeah, because for me, the challenge is to cultivate the quiet as a permanent presence. Again, to cooperate. I love that. I love that phrase too. To cooperate consciously with my indwelling capacity to be in the silence, and to notice, again, as human beings, we're actually addicted to excitement and external stuff. We think that good things and bad things are the result of what other people do to us or other things that happen, and we don't necessarily cultivate that inner source that Claudia was just referring to with the idea of the 12 powers that we all experience, that we all are born with access to: imagination, will, love, etc. And it does take some kind of, again, just speaking for myself, it does take some kind of willingness to fight through the noise, to return to the silence, to find that anchor point, which is for me where the peace that passes understanding dwells. Anybody else before we move on to our daily bread? Who would read paragraph 17? Okay, go for it. Diane.
Okay, our daily bread. What is our daily bread? Give us this day our daily bread, Jesus said. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. This petition, then, must have a larger meaning than is commonly believed. Daily bread means more than the food that is eaten physically. Daily bread is divine ideas that feed and nourish the soul and build states of consciousness that accords with the will of God. There is a substance in true words, and no one lives life to the fullest unless he feeds upon words of truth in daily prayer and meditation. And forgive us our debts. We also have forgiven our debtors. There is a law involved here. According to this law, we cannot be forgiven until we first forgive. This would be seen more clearly if the prayer were put in the affirmative form. Thus, thou dost forgive debts as we forgive our debtors. And shall I read the final third paragraph for this section?
Yeah, please, if you're willing.
Okay. And bring us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. Oh boy. All things originate in mind, and evil comes from wrong thinking. To be delivered from evil is to have the mind cleansed from all belief in evil by the Spirit in us, by prayer, find meditation. In this way, we are delivered from evil, delivered from the very last one of the thoughts of evil that may be in mind. So long as one false thought or belief remains, our mind needs the purifying power of the Christ mind. Before reading any annotations, I like to think that when I say the Lord's Prayer, as it quotes in the third paragraph that I just read, says, and bring us not into temptation. I have never thought that God brought us into temptation. I have always prayed the Lord's Prayer as leave us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. God isn't about tempting us. I don't think. Anyway, that's
Yeah. Good.
Maybe.
Maybe what?
Well, go on. We'll come back to it.
All right. You want me to read the annotations?
Please.
This is getting really small. I have to use my.
You can do it.
I can do it. Bear with. Annotation number 1. We cannot be forgiven.
You kind of just went mute there a little bit, Di.
Okay. Am I still unmuted, Belden?
I mean, I can hear you, but it's like
Yeah.
somebody covered your mic or something.
Oh. How am I now? Okay.
There you go.
Okay. I'll speak up. We cannot be forgiven until we first forgive. This is getting pretty tiny print for me in the copy that I have. This we find to be in harmony with a law of mind. That is, an idea must be dissolved before another can take its place. If you have in mind a thought that someone has wronged you, you cannot let in the cleansing power of the Spirit until you have dissolved and cast out the idea of the mortal wrong. Okay, here we go. Second annotation. Evil comes from wrong thinking, what I've always called error thinking. There is but one presence and one power. God.
We lost you again.
God omnipotent, but we have the privilege.
Diane?
Yes.
We lost you again. You just muffled.
I don't know why I'm muffling. Well, then why am I muffling? I don't know. Okay. I'm trying my best here. Back to number 2. Evil comes from wrong.
I can't hear you. Can anybody else hear?
No, I can't.
Sorry, Di. It's just something happened. Somebody willing to pick it up?
Evil comes from wrong thinking. There is but one presence and one power, God omnipotent. But we have the privilege and freedom of using this power as we will. When we misuse it, we bring about inharmonious conditions. These are called evil. Evil appears in the world because we are not in spiritual understanding. We have not learned that all is mind. Neither have we conformed to the law of mind, with the result that inharmony appears in our bodies and affairs. We can do away with evil by learning rightly to use the one power. If there were a power of evil, it could not be changed. Huh.
Oh, that Charles Filmore, always challenging us. Okay, so thanks, Lillian. Thanks, Diane. So we're looking at two different lines of the Lord's Prayer here. Obviously, give us this day our daily bread, and as we forgive our debts, we have also forgiven our debtors. And oh, right, the third one, and bring us not or lead us not, leave us not. Different translations. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Bring us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. So, thoughts, reflections, comments, disagreements?
Well, I think we're all in alignment here on and bring us not into temptation. For me, that was the Dorothy, because she said, well, some of us learned as lead us not into temptation. And I remember her distinctly saying, God would never lead us into temptation. So she was the one who, in my world, said, leave us not in temptation. So I bless Dorothy for that, because that was helpful. And that was, yeah, God's not the devil. God's not going to challenge us. No, not that I believe in the devil, but that was helpful.
Okay, thanks.
I had always, when it was give us this day our daily bread, and keep a true Lent, there's and I can't remember the guy's name, that very famous Lamsa, I guess is what his name is, who translated the Lord's Prayer. And his comment is, it is actually the positive pluperfect, give us this day our tomorrow's bread. So I always kind of substitute that. It's not just today, but that's a sign of real conscious prosperity in the ask, which is not just today, but tomorrow as well. And then I like what it says here, that it's more than bread. I always thought of it as prosperity, bread being prosperity, but this expansion into divine ideas that nourish our soul is a wonderful expansion and an interpretation of that word of daily bread.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you.
I agree too. I think it touches me to be able to read the actual words that talk about nourishing the soul. It does build that state of being conscious about my soul and what my intentions are, and maybe what is my personal lesson in the moment of whatever's going on. And I think for me personally, when there is evil, sometimes I have to slow down and, or if I perceive something as evil, and I have to reevaluate that and understand, I've sometimes read the daily word and been able to just rethink the daily word with something that happened during the day and see how that applies. So I guess I look at it as my own lesson, my own, how is this nourishing my soul today? And it makes me look back at my own growth. How am I using the daily bread? And it's more in the moment. I don't look too far ahead, but more in the moment. And I think that's what I appreciate most about just reading the daily bread, having a time for meditation and prayer, and understanding that it's all a bigger picture that does nourish the soul. It's not just about nourishing our physical bodies with food.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So can we say that this word daily actually does a lot of work? Because what I also see is, so daily means every day. That means doing that conscious cooperation we talked about in the previous section, um, every day, practices daily. And then the other side of it, the other way that you can interpret daily here is the way that we do it in 12-step recovery. It's like just one day at a time, just for today. So it's another way of practicing presence. What's going on right here, right now?
It's a good reminder when something feels like it's blowing up in your face to just stop and breathe.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know what it's about, stopping is the first thing to do.
Well, and we're blessed with that apparatus of being able to stop and breathe. And anytime that we do that, we interrupt, even if it's just briefly, that emotional overwhelm that we can be experiencing. Just take a deep breath. Anything else before we move on?
Well, I love the part about forgiveness. If you're holding on to any feelings of unforgiveness towards someone or a situation, that what does he say there? That there's no place then for, what is it? If you have in mind a thought that someone has wronged you, you cannot let in the cleansing power of spirit until you've dissolved and cast out that idea of mortal wrong. I mean, it kind of, when we were reading it, I was like, yeah, there's just no room. If you're holding on to something with a clenched fist, there's no room to, receive grace or forgiveness. There's just no room. So I really liked that. Easier said than done, but I really liked it.
But it is the power of mind action. It's just another way of saying it.
Yes.
Or it's denial, then affirmation. So,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I always believe that Emily Cady did denials before she did affirmations in the book. Gotta
Well, and remember,
gotta
she
clean out
said,
the old before you make room for the new.
right, right, exactly. And she also pointed out, and I thought it was interesting, that some people are better suited to using denials than they are to affirmations. And she talks about the characteristics of the individuals who should use denials over affirmations. And I thought that was pretty bold of her.
It's so characteristic,
Yes.
powerful. As is this stuff.
I
Anything
appre-
else then?
I appreciate when you guys mention books because I do audiobooks on my library app. And so every time you mention books, I start jotting down notes. So I appreciate hearing about that. Um, and I know it's happened a few times. So I just wanted to give you a heads up. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for letting us know that.
Well, Sandy, let me give you a very high recommendation to a wonderful book that's called The Five Principles of Unity. The woman who wrote it, I don't have her name off the top of my head, but
Ellen
the woman,
Davenport.
Oh, yes.
yeah, thank you,
I
thank you, Ellen.
I have
You do have that one?
I do.
Uh,
I have to admit, I've only been through it once, and I can see a lifetime of reviewing it chapter by chapter.
yes, yes. For anybody who wants to kind of deep dive into this, she is the head of the education department for Unity headquarters.
Oh,
She was
okay.
in the day. She was a reporter, so she writes really clearly. And it is, as Sandy pointed out, it's a study book. I mean, every line kind of every paragraph stops you, and you're like, oh shit, what does this mean? So it's really a powerful book.
Oh,
Great. Let's move on then, if there's nothing else, to paragraph 18 under the section prayer and faith. Anybody willing to read for us?
I can read it.
Great, thank you.
Prayer and faith. Why is it necessary to pray believing that we have received? One of the secrets of the prayer of demonstration is revealed in this promise. All things whatsoever ye pray and ask for, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Matthew 21:22. This is mysterious only until we see that it is the way of faith. Faith is the perceiving power of the mind linked to a power to shape substance. Prosperity 43 by Charles Filmore. Faith shapes substance into the desired form or shape. At the tomb of Lazarus, before Lazarus came forth, Jesus said, Father, I thank thee that thou heardest me, and I knew that thou hearest me always. John 11:41-42. He knew that he had the answer even before he saw it manifested. When he increased the loaves and the fishes, he gave thanks before he saw the demonstration. To claim the answer and to give thanks for it, unwaveringly believing in God as absolutely unfailing, even before you see the proof, is one of the greatest lessons that can be learned in connection with prayer. This is the prayer of faith. With God can be no variation, neither shadow, that is cast by turning. James 1:17. All that he is, all that he does, all that he says are exact law and can no more fail than following the rules in arithmetic can fail to produce the correct answer. This is the basis of our faith in prayer, and this is why it is absolutely safe to claim the good he has promised and give thanks for it before we see it manifested. And the annotations are ask, for we know now that words and thoughts are a tremendous vibratory force, ever molding man's body and affairs. And two, to give thanks to it. To give thanks after a blessing does not usually require much of an effort. It is not hard to be polite when something nice has happened to us, but to give thanks before receiving may take some effort. All good effort is rewarded under spiritual law.
Thank you for
Hmm?
that. Um, any reactions, commentary?
Well, Evan Davenport in her book Five Principles, since we were just talking about it, to the footnote on 2, kind of paraphrases it by saying, giving thanks for something you receive is good manners. Giving thanks for something yet to come is faith. And I kind of really liked that really quick summary of her thought of what paraphrasing faith.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I like that. I think a lot of us are raised learning manners and teaching manners, and it's that's a good way to separate the two philosophies. I like that.
And you know, that's been proved so much. Well, at least a while ago when they talked about maybe athletes imaging, you know, that they got whatever they were after a strike or something, and it happened for them, you know.
Visualization of the positive outcome. Yes.
Yeah, they believed in it enough and visioned it enough.
Well, I would say, and I have frequently, that worry is also the same arithmetic, formulaic approach that we do all the things when we worry as what he's laid out here in terms of faith. We frame it, we think about it, we take it to the end, we go over and over and over seeing it, and you know, sometimes it comes to fruition. So
Well, I think of whenever I hear somebody said, I was afraid that was going to happen. Well, yes, they've been, you know, been putting that thought out there rather than, you know, not.
Or I just knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
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 Powerful.
It is.
We are.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what book I was reading it in, but it was talking about being a magnet for miracles.
Mm-hmm.
I like that idea because you have to really think about what miracle you might want, little or big, but if it's something to make your back to nourishing the soul, if it's something to step forward and be challenged about, it's helpful to think of a magnet rather than get into the worry zone. And yet we are tempted. Some of it may be upbringing or whatever, but even for me, maybe previous churches that I've been involved with, that being raised as a Methodist, there were just certain things ingrained. And as I became an adult, I wanted to explore other miracles and other things in my personal spiritual growth. And I really had to spend more time than I expected. And figure, this is a lifelong journey. This is not something like go to college and get a 4-year degree and you're over. But it's so much more, and being able to share some of that growth at whether we were at Howe Park or online with Zoom has really helped me to go down the path of the education and then explore what does nourish my soul. But the magnet for miracles is certainly intertwined with prayer, meditation, all of that.
Yeah, well put.
Well, I follow a podcast gal called Mel Robbins, and a couple of weeks ago, she had posted on her YouTube, I guess, a neuroscience explains how to manifest parens without the woo-woo. And, basically, and I loved that she did this because other people who are not metaphysical get to know this. And it was with Dr. James Daly. Yeah. So it works. It's just like math. It works. And it doesn't matter if you believe or as we do or not believe as we do. It works.
So that leads me to a question. Do you think that this question gets answered in this text? Why is it necessary to pray, believing that we have received?
I think that's explained here when it says faith is it's perceiving power of the mind linked with the power to shape. Power of mind has the power to shape. And this is a little separate from this, but my favorite saying is a Native American saying, which give thanks for unknown blessings already on their way, which sets your mind in a positive expectation and ties, I think, ties right into this faith preceding the power of the mind to shape.
Okay. Anybody else?
I've read recently about the idea of miracles not being a lightning bolt from God, but each of us being open to the goodness that exists kind of congealing to you.
Yeah. And what if each of us is a miracle in manifestation? Why, maybe there's some information about that in the next paragraph. I think we have time for, well, this is a long one, so we may not have time for this. So let's just start with the first paragraph, number 19. The first of this number 19. Would somebody be willing to read?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
How do we come into conscious unity with God? This claiming of what is ours in truth we call affirmation. Jesus was bold and fearless in making the highest claims for himself. He affirmed, I and the Father are one, and all things whatsoever the Father hath are mine, and so raised himself above the prevailing thought of the world. In this way, he demonstrated his sonship. He is our example. He came to teach us how to attain the realization of our unity with God.
All right, so now he's got me curious. Let's go on to the next one, Lillian, if you're willing.
Okay, we can attain this realization by following in his steps, by doing as he did. He said, judge not according to appearance, but judge righteous judgment. In the realm of the manifest world, all about us, many things appear true that are not true in spirit, and we are freed from the habit of judging by appearances and established in the consciousness of the truth of our being by the prayer of faith made in understanding. One of the names of God is I am. I am is being. When we enter the silence and speak the name I am, it brings our being into conscious union with him in whom we live and move and have our being. There is in reality but one being. Oneness means sameness. We are to become conscious that we are unified with God, are the same in nature as God. This consciousness comes from knowing that I am, from thinking, feeling, and claiming that I am a spiritual being, a child of God.
If you want to finish it up for us?
Okay. As in the stillness of the soul, we meditate on that which we know God is. We are to become conscious that I am that I am. God is love. In the silence, I am being that which God is, love. Therefore, I know I am love. So with all the other qualities of God of which you may think, you are to be them through thinking and feeling these qualities or ideas within you, and then you are to make them manifest. The belief of separation of our being from God's being is only a part of the falsity that comes from judging by appearances. We overcome this claiming, affirming prayer in faith. I and the Father are one. The first step is entering the silence, is to think of the presence of God. The second step is to feel oneness with God, the good. Upon these two fundamental steps, all the true prayer rests, for thinking and feeling build consciousness.
Thank you.
One. Oh, okay.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, thanks.
One, demonstrated his sonship. We reveal our sonship to ourselves and to others by claiming it by declaring that we are not a child of mortality, but a child of God, that the Spirit of God dwells within us and shines through us, that this Spirit is Christ, child of God. I am a being, if you would know the mystery of being, see yourself in being, know yourself as integral idea in divine mind, and all other ideas will recognize you as their fellow worker. Throw yourself out of the Holy Trinity and you become an onlooker. Throw yourself into the Trinity and you become an avenue of expression. Feeling these qualities or ideas within you, the I am puts feeling into what it thinks. And so Eve, feeling, becomes the mother of all living. Feeling is spirit, which quickens. Women symbolize the soul region of man and is the mother principle of God in expression. Wow, that's a lot.
Well, all of this is a lot. So thank you very much for reading all that. And I think what we'll do is we'll reread this next week and we get started because it's just chock-a-block full of stuff. We have a couple of minutes for any preliminary thoughts that we might want to just put on the table before we wrap up.
Can I share something?
Yeah, of course.
So thank you. So this whole thing about the Trinity kind of set me back. I mean, I was kind of flowing with it until I hit that one. So I went to Christian Healing, Being Perfect idea, page 20. And so you can noodle on this while we're away for 7 days and come back to it. The Trinity is known commonly as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Metaphysically, it is known as mind, idea, and expression. These three are one: mind, idea, expression. Each sees itself as including the other two, yet in creation separate. Jesus, the type man, placed himself in the Godhead and said, "He that hath seen me hath seen the Father." But recognizing the supremacy of spiritual principle which he was demonstrating, he said, "The Father is greater than I." Reducing the Trinity to simple numbers takes away much of its mystery. When we say that there is one being with three attitudes of mind, we have stated in plain terms all that is involved in the intricate theology doctrine of the Trinity. So I'm going to go back here and say, metaphysically, the Trinity is known as mind, idea, and expression. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And actually, there is a lesson that goes into this later on in greater depth. So that what you read there is the basis of another lesson. So that's beautiful. So we'll come back to this next week and start here on how do we come into conscious unity with God? Perhaps the most practical question any true student can ask. And with that, I'd like to invite anybody who feels so moved to pray us out.
You're not muted. You're speaking. You can see me speaking.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, how about the prayer for protection for all of us together?
The light
The
Of
light of
God
God surrounds us.
surrounds us. The love
The love of God enfolds us.
The
the
power
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 of
of
God
God protects us.
protects us. The
The
presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God
God
is, and all is well.
well.
Thank you, Marty.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank you, Marty.
You're welcome.
Yes,
God bless.
Marty,
And,
thank you very much.
and
A
we'll
lot to
see.
chew on.
That Charles Filmore. I love him.
Very meaty.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Blessings, everyone. Have a great week.
Yep. You too. Thank you.